Hello Serie A fan! 2 weeks into 2022 and we've seen miracle comebacks, last minute heartbreak, off-field brawls and injury crises. And that's just at Juventus. Inter are rescued by a caged lion as they claim the first silverware of the year, while Insigne prepares to bid farewell to Napoli for the sunny climes of, checks notes, Toronto. We discuss all that and more in this episode of Scudetto. Hello and welcome back to the pod and a happy new year to all of our listeners. We unfortunately are starting the new year just as a two-piece. Unfortunately, Oscar is off sick this week, so we're wishing him a very, very speedy recovery. But yeah, we hope you've all enjoyed a good break from the football as well, although right back into that now. But Boaz, you are here with me this week, thankfully. How have you been, and have you made any New Year's resolutions or anything?
First of all, you saying that we're here as a two-piece makes it sound like Oscar is off doing some eccentric side project or something. But New Year resolution was for my podcast to take over the world and become the leading Italian podcast in the market. So let's see how that goes. Maybe listeners can call me up on this time next year.
Yeah. Let's see where we are then. And have you got a drink for this evening?
Yeah, I was very pleased to find that my local alcohol dealer has somehow stocked up on a bunch of Beavertown beers. So I happily bought one of each.
Tremendous.
I've got Gamma Ray with me right now. And my infant son is particularly infused by the color of the cans, and he keeps picking them out of the fridge at 7 a.m. and saying, "Dad, have one of these." Probably not very appropriate. So I try not to drink at that time.
That's how bad habits start. I also have a beer this evening. I've got a Che Guava Radical Lager. It's actually quite pleasant. It's the guava is not too dominant. It's more kind of a hint of guava, and it's really quite refreshing actually. So that's my first beer of the year, and happy to say it's a good one.
I just had my first sip of Gamma Ray in about 2 years, and it's as good as I remember it. Appreciate that in some markets people will be like, "Oh, this is just a standard beer," but it's nice. It's good to have it back in my life.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they? They're good. Pricey, but good. Right, okay, let's get on to the football. Because obviously it's been a bit of a shambles of a start to the year, really, with COVID hitting the calendar, particularly in game week 20. So that the first game's back with 4 cancellations, but obviously knock-on effects as well, with all sorts of chaos in the run-up to the games on the weekend just gone. But I think a nice place to actually start this is at the Supercoppa final, because we've got the first silverware of the year has been handed out, and it is the Nerazzurri, Inter, who have taken the title. In terms of the game itself, Inter kind of dominated. They were definitely the better team. Juve, were organized and kind of resolute, but same issues as always, really, with under Allegri. But they managed to take it to extra time. It looked for all the world as if it was going to penalties, and then at the very end there was obviously that Alexandro, a bit of a shocker, the blooper that led to Alexis Sanchez grabbing a late dramatic winner for Inter. So first of all, Boaz, I guess an all-encompassing question: what did you make of the game?
Ultimately, I feel the better team won, of course, and the team with the most quality came out on top. Having said that, Juventus did make the most of their resources, and they did put up a good fight, but ultimately it wasn't enough. But they took the champions almost to penalties. So it was an interesting game, if not a particularly pretty game, let's put it this way. I don't think there will be any complaints that Inter eventually won it. I think it's a credit to Simone Inzaghi, because he seems to have quite a track record with this competition in particular.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the Italian media are kind of discussing whether or not this, backing up the Scudetto by winning this, whether that marks the start of a winning cycle for Inter. Personally, I don't know. I mean, what's your take on that?
I feel that the Supercoppa is the classic competition that if you win it, it means the world to you. And if you're not in it, it doesn't really matter at all. Probably if losing it at so close to the end for Juventus will sting. But I think looking back, it's not the end of the world. But it's a classic quote. But winning breeds a winning mentality breeds more winning, and coming out on top against a team that ostensibly are Inter's biggest rivals at the moment does do wonders for the team morale and for their self-esteem and also for the project.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it, isn't it? Is winning trophies breeds confidence, and kind of, I guess, psychology in sport is a huge thing. It's spoken about a lot, but I think it does still go kind of undervalued. I mean, personally, I would say that it's still very, very early days to kind of be assuming that Inter are going to be running away with the Scudetto, because Milan obviously have come back from Christmas. They look very refreshed. They've got two wins under their belt. I think Inter are now only a point ahead. And obviously they've got a big run of games, so we'll see whether that actually translates into the league. Obviously, as well, worth noting that Milan, who, if we're honest, are the only challengers really now, I would say, to Inter for the title. Milan don't have the European football, so I think it's going to be a really exciting second half of the season. Actually, I think we're going to get a good title run out of it.
If I had to be a little bit cheeky, I would say that Inter will not have much of a European run once they face Liverpool in the next tie. But we'll see how that goes. Inzaghi might surprise us.
We will, of course, see how that goes. The other side in this final, obviously, Juve also in the Champions League. And the Champions League, any thought on them, boys?
It goes without saying that Juventus have hardly set the league on fire this season, both in terms of play and crucially in terms of results. And once more, you could bemoan a transfer policy that has not been functional to the play of Sarri, to Pirlo, who incidentally did win this competition, as well as now Allegri.
Yeah.
Inter could field their best 11 and still rely on impact subs come on off the bench and completely change the game. In contrast, you had the Juventus side that was missing De Ligt, Quadrado, Szczesny with his bizarre green pass issues, as well as Chiesa, who we'll get back onto later. But you have to say that the players in the current squad really don't fit Allegri's system.
Yeah. I mean, you did touch on something there about just the depth of Inter's squad. I think we're really, really seeing that now, aren't we? But yeah, I mean, Dybala apparently left off just for purely tactical reasons, according to some of the kind of analysis that I was reading afterwards.
On the topic of Dybala, I found it slightly bizarre to leave him on the bench, ostensibly for tactical reasons. But, Dybala was supposed to be the poster boy of this side, and particularly now that Ronaldo is gone, he was supposed to be essentially their star player. This was the week where it was reported in Italian media that he would not be renewing his contract, despite the Turin club seemingly intent on signing him up again. But if you're leaving your best player on the bench in a final, it doesn't really give him confidence, and it doesn't show that the manager is 100% committed to him. Yeah. So, once again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that the recruitment at Juventus in recent years has not been on point.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a different system, he's the player that you build this Juve around. I've heard it said that in a team that gives up so much possession, you lose so much from Paulo Dybala, which I think is a very, very fair point. But yeah, if he doesn't renew, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, because I absolutely love Paulo Dybala. I'm big fan, as I'm sure anyone who's listened to this podcast will know. But yeah, speaking about Juve, they came into this game off the back of that incredible game in Rome. It was the game of the week last week, and Roma obviously getting themselves 3-1 ahead, looked like they were running away with it, and then within the space of, 7 minutes or something, Juve completely turning the game on its head, and you've got to say Roma throwing it away. Also, given the fact that they had the chance to kind of draw a level from the penalty spot afterwards. Just an absolute shambles from Roma's point of view and from Mourinho's point of view, just when it looked like he was kind of pulling out an important result against another team that you're competing, if not for Champions League spot, perhaps for Europa League spot. But from Juve's point of view, that's very encouraging, right? That's something that Allegri can build on, wouldn't you say?
It was a character win and perhaps a match dictated by a little bit of fluke. As I was quite fond of De Sciglio, who ended up scoring the winning goal. I was quite fond of his post-match quotes where he essentially said that they'd kind of entered the pitch a bit a cazzo, a bit... How would you translate that, Kenny?
Well, they're just haphazardly, I don't know.
Yeah, they couldn't be bothered, which is kind of damning if you consider the club he plays for. But it was a few minutes of madness and also like a couple of defensive mistakes that you really don't expect. For a Mourinho side, it felt like, as Mourinho himself said, although it's a bit strange that he is the one saying it, but it felt like they crumbled under the weight of expectation.
Yeah, and obviously Mourinho's got a bit of a track record of saying that at clubs that he's gone on to leave. Bad news for Juve in this. Obviously, that Chiesa injury that you mentioned earlier. That's bad news for Juve, and it's bad news for Italy. It's his anterior cruciate ligament, which he's torn, and certainly out for the season. Could be longer, but how much of a blow is that? I guess let's take it in two parts. First of all, how much of a blow is it to Juve, and how much of a blow is it to Italy, obviously going into those World Cup playoffs?
Paradoxically, I think that it's a bigger blow for Italy than it is for Juve, because it has felt at times this season that Allegri didn't quite know where to fit Chiesa in. Although in Allegri's defense, in the last few games, it did feel like Chiesa was coming into his own and starting to become the leader that we expect him to be. But for Italy, it's with Zaniolo still not back to his best, and with Immobile's well-documented lack of scoring power whenever he wears the Azzurri shirt. Chiesa was really someone that we could rely on. Him being out against the potential game against Portugal is a huge blow.
Well, we're saying a game against Portugal, but
I said potential. I made sure to stick my hands out in front of me.
Fair enough. Yeah,
it could be Turkey.
Wouldn't disagree with any of that. It could be. I guess just looking forward to next weekend, the big game, undoubtedly the big game is the one in Bergamo between Atalanta and Inter. I mean, this feels to me like a huge game for both clubs. It feels like a huge game for Inter for obvious reasons, because it's, a very, very, very tough game, and Milan could potentially overtake them again. But for Atalanta as well, I think that Champions League race is really looking like it's going to be between Napoli, Atalanta, and Juve at the moment. In the context of that, in the context of a title race in Champions League, what would you say, Boaz? How important is this game?
I think this touches on some themes that we've spoken about in past episodes. Atalanta, despite getting more points than they've ever had before at this stage of the season, they always seem to kind of hiccup when the weight of expectation is on their shoulders. We saw that in the Champions League. We saw it in the game against Roma, where if you look at the pure stats, they should have won that game quite easily. But Roma somehow came away with a 4-1 victory. The same with losses against Milan, etc. So this is a real test of Atalanta's character, and I think the two games that they've had so far have been quite a gentle build-up for this game against the champions. And Atalanta, despite not looking like they're putting 100% into the games, came away with two very easy victories, and now is the time to stamp their authority. The flip side is that Inter had a little bit of a moan about the asymmetric calendar that's been introduced for the first time. And obviously, you can tell that most of Inter's quote-unquote big games are going to be between now and the beginning of March, including they've just had Lazio, they're going to have Atalanta, they also have Milan and Juve coming up. But should they come out of this game relatively unscathed, it will put them on a very good path towards a second Scudetto.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I'd also agree with the point on Atalanta. So the Udinese game, you look at the result, you see it was 6-2, but I watched that game, obviously, and it did feel Atalanta were so comfortable in that game. They really were, but I'm really not sure that was a 6-2 game. I mean, I think it was more just Udinese just for starters, just not really creating Atalanta any real trouble. And then I think after the fourth goal went in, it was just kind of like target practice, really.
Udinese were very angered by that game, and they felt that it should have been postponed. Yeah, they ended up playing players who had not trained all week. So I mean, the 6-2 score is a bit of a freak result, but generally speaking, you'd expect Atalanta to beat Udinese 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, we should mention as well that is one of the games that was, for COVID related reasons was it was up in the air right up until I think an hour or so before kickoff. No one really knew if it was actually gonna go ahead. Right, there is one final thing before we move on to the good week, bad week section that we should talk about, because I mean it's sad news for fans of Italian football, really. But Insigne is going to be moving to Toronto at the end of this season. Obviously, that's been confirmed, announced, along with some interesting social media messages from the player himself
and the club.
And the club, yes, exactly. But I mean, Insigne is going to be 31, I believe, by the time this move happens. He's going for 11 million euros a year. Just for context, I mean, we're going to come onto it later, but players like Çalhanoğlu going to Inter for 6 million, Zlatan earning around the same amount. I mean, that is a lot of money, 11 million euros a year. If you're Insigne, what would you have done? Would you be sticking out in Serie A for obviously incredible sums of money, but half as much as you'd be likely to earn in the MLS?
Football is a weird profession because, I mean, if he was a banker or if he worked for a shop and someone said, let me triple your salary if you come work for me in Toronto, then no one would have any gripes with that. But football brings in all sorts of aspects of loyalty, and the quality of the league as well is supposed to be a factor. I personally would go in the blink of an eye, even though I'm quite averse to cold weather. But I mean, I think the difference between Napoli and Toronto couldn't be wider, but it's going to be interesting. Yeah. And I can't really say anything bad against him, because after all, he's going to end his career in 3 or 4 years, and whatever money he makes now is supposed to last him for the rest of his life. At the same time, it's kind of sad to see that he's moving to what is currently at least a lesser league, and for us at least, and slightly selfishly, we'll probably won't be able to see him, although on a personal level, I'll be able to report about him in my personal Keeping Up with the Italians segment. So there's that at least.
Of course. Yeah, of course. So you'll be keeping all of the Italian football fans up to date. And that, Boaz, I suspect, is perhaps how you will manage to maintain your New Year resolution of having the most listened to Italian podcast. Right, okay. It is time to move on to Good Week, Bad Week, the first Good Week, Bad Week of the year. Let's start off with Good Week, Boaz. Let's try and start the year on a positive note. Who is your nomination for Good Week and why?
I was considering saying Milan because for a while in December it looked like they were really off the rails, but after a decent win against Empoli, they've managed to win their first 2 games back, albeit against quite small opposition. But for me, the most improved team, or the team that has impressed me the most, has to be Cagliari, who managed to get two back-to-back wins from behind, and one of them was in the 91st minute. So extra glory for the final kick of the game, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a very good shot. I mean, Inter would be the obvious one, but we can't give Inter, despite the number of times that we say this, we can't give Inter a good week every week.
Inter, in our defense for not giving it to Inter, their game against Bologna was called off, so they had one less game to impress us in.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although technically that would have been last week, but it is our first week back, so point very much taken. Yeah, I'm happy with Cagliari getting good week. Also on the basis that I think we've given them bad week at least once before. Credit where it's due.
I'm pretty sure they've never had the good week, or maybe had it once. So let's share the love.
Yeah. Fair play. Right, bad week. I think we both agree on this one. Do you want to reveal who this week's has had a bad week?
Anyone who has listened to this pod so far, or who has watched Serie A this week, will have to say Roma, if not Mourinho. The calamitous loss cannot be erased, and they also lost to Milan 3-1 in the previous game week, and kind of puts to bed the Mourinho theory that now they're beating big teams. And I'm going to keep an eye on the stats of how many days since Roma and Mourinho beat the top 6 team.
Are you going to let Mourinho know? Turn up at a press conference.
I'm sure I'll tag him, as I've done in the past. I doubt he will care.
Great. Okay, so that's it then. Settled. Good week, Cagliari. Bad week, Roma. No complaints from me, obviously, but Roma, I fully agree. Right, so we're just going to do a quick roundup, the best of the rest. So starting off with the Coppa Italia, which has obviously also started. The round of 16 kicked off this week. And starting off with Fiorentina, who beat Napoli 5-2 in extra time. Atalanta beating Venezia 2-0 after what must be said was a contentious Muriel goal, which was judged not to be handball by VAR. I couldn't personally make up my mind whether it was or it wasn't. From a photograph I saw on social media, it looked very blatant. But then when I watched the replays, to me it still looks like it hits his shoulder. And the other one is Milan, who overcame Genoa. That game had kicked off by the time we started recording tonight, but was close to finishing. It was 3-1 at the time. That's presumably how it ended, Boaz.
Yep. And Milan seemingly stabbing Shevchenko in the back, and he's apparently very close to being sacked at Genoa.
Yeah, sad if that does happen. Elsewhere, Brozovic has extended his contract at Inter, reportedly going to be earning 6 million euros per year plus bonuses. I don't think that's been officially announced yet, but it's one of those very badly kept secrets.
It's very deserved.
Yeah, absolutely deserved. A fantastic midfielder, and yeah, I thought absolutely that he was one of Inter's most important players last year as well. Often an unsung hero, really. Although not among Inter fans, it must be said. But this year, I think he's definitely getting the plaudits he deserves.
He's really improved both under Conte and now under Inzaghi, and he's added a little bit of fantasy to his game, which really adds a new dimension.
Yeah. Agreed. And Mino Raiola, who underwent surgery in Milan, those close to him have denied reports that it was emergency surgery, we should say. I've said that he's doing okay. It was a planned procedure, but nonetheless, we have to say all the best, and hope he's back to full fitness.
The rumors that it's a hernia surgery for all the money bags that he's carrying are completely false.
Right, okay. On that note, on to transfer news. Transfer window is open, obviously, and Fiorentina have signed Piontek, who immediately got on the score sheet in that Napoli Coppa Italia game that we spoke about there. Debut goal for him. Boga to Atalanta from Sassuolo. I mean, it appears to be done to the point where he's been pictured holding up a shirt, and Gasparini mentioned him in a press conference as one of the players that was unavailable to him. But Atalanta have still not announced the signing. But I mean, that is definitely the worst kept secret in Italian football. Seems to be a done deal. Roma have signed Sergio Oliveira from Porto and Ainsley Maitland-Niles from Arsenal.
This is the football manager approach to signing players. I kind of know his name. Let's sign him.
Yeah, it's just that. I mean, that seems to be Roma's approach. Seems to be raid the Premier League, basically, and the Portuguese league, I guess, because Mourinho knows that well as well. Andrea Conti has gone from Milan to Sampdoria, and Inter have signed Ajax keeper Onana, who will join the club in the summer.
That's Rihanna's favorite player.
Right, moving on. Obviously, there's changes to the COVID regulations all over the place, including the match day changes where used to be 13 players. I mean, I lose count, to be honest, but used to be 13 players that had to test positive before games were postponed. That's changing to 8, I believe.
The Italian Serie A has decided to more or less copy the way the Bundesliga is dealing with
that's right.
COVID. And so, it's down to very few players, and it's their intention to not postpone any more games, which is kind of funny because with the exception of the Premier League, Italy is the league with the most postponed games out of the top 5 leagues.
Yeah. And obviously also COVID restrictions have been brought back in on stadiums as well. Now a maximum of 5,000 fans. That's right.
Which is ridiculous.
Did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I feel it means that, I mean, it doesn't really have much of a, I'm not a doctor, but it means that a stadium like Venezia's, they can have almost half of their stadium there, whereas San Siro is completely empty. But if these people are all sitting next to each other, that really doesn't make a difference. So I think these restrictions should be on the basis of how many people can actually fit in the place, and the authorities should work on regulations where people don't sit next to each other as opposed to X amounts of people. I mean, if you have half a stadium full, in theory, you could have a seat between each person, and also make sure everyone wears masks. And that way you restrict the contagion. But ultimately, stadiums are open air, and I think the chance of catching COVID in these conditions is much lower than certain other activities that seem to be given a pass.
Yeah, that's true. I think one of the arguments, though, is just the sheer mass of people that go to these events and public transport getting there. So people crowding onto buses, trams, metros, etc.
I think this has been driven partly from images on TV showing groups of ultras and whatnot grouped together in a section, hugging after goals, etc.
Yeah,
but,
certainly that makes no sense, allowing 5,000 people all to be in the same stand, pretty much, which seems to be the case when you watch a lot of games.
But at the same time, the messaging is very confused. For example, this restriction you just mentioned to 5,000 people did not apply for the Coppa Italian games that happened today. And they're only applying for the next 2 games, and then we'll see. Obviously, we'll be a lot wiser in a few weeks' time what's happening with Omicron. But if you're gonna put restrictions down, stick them down immediately. Like last week's games were fine. Now it's not fine. It just feels like it's a very confused messaging.
Yeah, thankfully the virus will wait for us to play these two rounds of games before we decide to. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
And I mentioned it earlier, but the Chesney had some issues with it. He's not received his full vaccination, and therefore his green pass. Had he been sent off in the game against Inter, he would not be allowed to be in the stadium. He'd have to go to his car or something ridiculous like that. So again, like COVID just opens up a whole bunch of weird situations that we just never expected.
Yeah. Right, we're going to finish off on the news that Genoa signed under 21 Italy whiz kid Yeboah, which will make Boaz very sad. And on that note, Boaz, keeping up with the Italians.
Yeah, I mean, Yeboah was a stalwart for me. He scored, I believe, 7 goals in Austria for Austria Vienna, and he was making a name for himself for the Azzurrini as well. And he actually came on in the game today for Genoa versus Milan. So I wish him the best of his career, and I think we mentioned it in the past, but he's related to Tony Yeboah, so extra credit for that. So first of all, I've got Alessio Lisci, who you may remember we mentioned a few weeks ago, who he took over as Levante coach. A reminder, he's only 36 years old, and he scored his first win for the club, and it's also the first win of the season. So good on him. Also, going back a few weeks, we had Ranieri take on Conte in Watford versus Spurs, a game that Spurs ultimately won, but nice to see two old acquaintances meet in England. Going around the tour of the world a little bit, Federico Spada, formerly of Parma and Udinese's academy, has become the director of sport at Fortaleza, the Colombian second division club. Very interesting. Closer to me, Davide Petrucci, who used to be a Roma prospect, scored his first goal for league leaders Beersheva in the desert here. And far away, Valerio Racuglia is the new manager of North Shore United, AFC, of New Zealand, apparently the oldest club in New Zealand. And Gianni De Biasi has renewed his contract with the Azerbaijan national team, whereas Roberto Bordin has quit his post as the Moldova manager. And that's it from keeping up with the Italians.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Boaz. Nice and concise. Right. Honourables and dishonourables, basically, is what we've got left. I'm going to kick us off with an honourable mention for Simone Inzaghi, who, after the Supercoppa win, has now won 4 out of 5 finals that he has been involved in as a manager. So an honourable mention to him from me.
He's beaten Allegri twice in this competition now.
There you go. And I think one of the victories in the Cups as well was against Allegri as well. And Allegri managed Juve side. I think it's the 3rd time that he's beaten Juve in a final. Is that right? Am I getting mixed up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right, you've got... Is it an honourable for Zlatan doing Zlatan things?
This is the obligatory honourable for Zlatan. First of all, he scored against his 80th different opponent, which is quite unmatched. But also, he's now scored for a 23rd season in top flight, matching Totti and Ryan Giggs. So were he to score next season in Serie A again, he would be the first player to score 24 seasons in a top flight. That's ridiculous. He's been scoring in top flight since 1999.
What a specimen. Talking about specimens, I'm going to give a goals honourable, my first goals honourable of the year, to Petagna, Napoli's Petagna, for his acrobatics, which you might not expect from him if you've ever seen a photograph of him or if you've ever watched him play. But wonderful finish for Napoli against Samp, and the winning goal. I thought you might take exception to this because it was a very poor looping defensive header that he latched onto, but the way he adjusted himself, and it was almost it was a volley, but it was almost like a semi-bicycle kick, side on into pretty much into the top corner. Just a glorious goal.
I would normally take exception to this, but because it's Petagna and he's built like a fridge, there's no reason why he should be trying that at all.
Exactly. I was trying to allude to that as politely as I possibly could. Right, Buzz, you've got dishonourable for Handanovic.
Yeah, while Inter's win against Lazio was driven by their defense with 2 goals from Bastoni and De Vrij, and also Bastoni setting up one of the goals, pretty much playing the Eriksen role, Bastoni seemingly. But Handanovic was heavily to blame for Lazio's goal, and I'm not sure what he was doing, and it's no surprise to me that Inter have announced a new keeper coming up next season, because if you have to look at one weak spot in the whole team, it has to be the number one.
Wow. Oof. The captain as well. Following that long. Dishonourable with another dishonourable. I couldn't tell if this was a dishonourable or an honourable, because I quite enjoyed the fact that he said it, but I just have absolutely no idea why he did. But after scoring the winning goal in the Supercoppa, Alexis Sanchez gave an interview on the pitch, where he absolutely, I mean, he just went off on one, basically. He had incredibly kind and heartfelt words about Alexis Sanchez, where he described himself as a lion in the cage, and was speaking about his goal and said that's what champions are like. They do things others don't do. Also went on to basically say that Conte told him he was the best player at the club, but he was going to use him as an impact sub for the last 15 minutes. And I told him that I need to come on earlier than that, and alluded to the fact that similar sort of situations happening under Simone Inzaghi. I mean, it was just out of nowhere. And I think realistically, it was a very me-centric comment in what is a great team collective at Inter. So I'm giving him a dishonourable because I don't think it was necessarily the most the best judged response to the situation.
But furthermore, as we mentioned previously, the goal was heavily aided by a defensive mistake. So it's not like Alexis Sanchez scored the goal of the season in that moment. I mean, it was great that he scored it, but I pretty much think even Andanovic would have knocked that one in.
Yeah, even a literal lion in a cage might have done it. Right, okay, so moving on from that to Bonucci, I think I'm guessing this can only be a dishonourable because I think I know what incident you're about to make reference to.
Yeah, I mean, Bonucci was on the sideline ready to come on, ostensibly to take penalties, and apparently Allegri was asking his players to commit a tactical foul so that the sub could be made. But before it was made, Alexis Sanchez scored the goal we just mentioned. And Bonucci got into an altercation with a member of Inter's staff and ended up slapping him, which is just outrageous.
Yeah, it was outrageous.
And he's only got a €10,000 fine so far. I'm not sure there's even a ban. So very strange precedent set in the Super Cup.
It is. Because, I mean, surely that's violent conduct, right?
Yeah, but that's only on the pitch. You're allowed to slap some random guy in a suit.
Yeah.
It's the only rule.
Apparently
it's the exception.
Tell him that you're going to kill him as well, right? Because that's what the reports are, that he said, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, very interesting.
Stonewall dishonourable.
This is a very dishonourable-centric episode.
We started this episode so positively with... this section so positively with 3 or 4 honourable mentions. It's turned very sour because I've got a dishonourable now of my own for the eBay UK social media team, and this is basically following the injury to Chiesa. The eBay team decided they've basically got this. I'm not going to give it too much oxygen because it was just very, very ill judged. But they've got this competition at the moment where people can pay a £5, essentially enter a competition, pay a £5, and you get Roberto Carlos potentially coming and turning out for your Sunday League side. And they decided to draw on the injury to Chiesa and tagged the official Juventus account in a tweet and said, "Hey, Juventus, we've got a winger that we think might be able to help out," and then emojis of like crying with laughter afterwards, which obviously drew, a lot of consternation from Italian football fans. Not really the time where a player has a potentially career-threatening injury to be trying to get some lols for the sake of promoting your. Let's be honest, your second-rate competition. So dishonourable for them.
Totally.
And we're going to end this. I'm hoping this is on a positive note with a honourable from you, Boaz, for Verona player Ceccherini.
I was very amused by Ceccherini's Instagram post last week. He posted a picture of himself on the pitch with the body of an opposition player, but the head of his wife, and the quote was, My wife always complains that I'm only posting Instagram pictures of football, so here's a picture of her. And
Oh dear.
It's just so it's funny. I mean, in his defense, his next Instagram post was him announcing that his wife is pregnant. So I mean, at the very least, he's gone on to make an actual post about her. But yeah, I'm not sure she would have been too happy with that previous one.
No, don't think so. Right, perfect. Thank you very much, Boaz. That is all we've got time for this week. That's us done with the first episode of the year. So I just want to thank all the listeners. Once again, hope you've all enjoyed the break. Remind you all to please subscribe to Scudetto on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next week, enjoy the football.
Che sta decretando lo scudetto del Milan in questo preciso istante. Finita! La Juventus è campione d'Italia questa data, il 6 maggio. Tutto di anticipo, la Roma è campione d'Italia per la stagione 2000-2001.